Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello. We'll allow people to roll in, but very, very nice to see some familiar names in here.
Let me see. I'm always so excited to see who shows up. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
hmm Hope everyone's having a had a great weekend and hope you're all having a really lovely start to your week. And yeah, we'll get started in just a moment. Well, firstly, welcome. My name is Joel Briere, and I am co-founder of Five MEO DMT Information and Vital Education, along with my co-founder, the amazing Victoria Wushner.
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro. Yep. Well, I'm Victoria. I'm also co-founder of Five, as Joel mentioned. And yeah, one of the things we like to do, especially if it's somebody's first time to one of these webinars, is just share a little bit about Five. So I'm just going to read a little description for you guys. So here at Five, our mission is to help shepherd 5-MeO DMT into the world in a safe and effective manner, starting with a centralized hub for resources and education on 5-MeO DMT, and by engaging in research and drug discovery. Our website includes over 30 plus pages of free information on 5-MeO DMT, including integration specialists, informational webinars like this one, scientific research, and more. In addition, Five is known as the gold standard of 5-MeO DMT trainings, offering the highest standard of education to both facilitators and integration specialists. So yeah, just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time tonight. I know it's a Monday, maybe you're just getting back to work and doing all the things. So yeah, just thank you so much for carving the time out to be with us tonight. And not sure if some of you were able to make it on our last webinar or not, but our last webinar on ethics and 5-MeO DMT facilitation training was amazing. Great turnout. It was a lot of fun. And we had a lot of questions. We had a lot of questions we didn't have time to get to, a lot of questions that were still coming through in our social media and whatnot. And so we decided to have this, a little quick kind of Q&A 30-minute hangout session for you guys. And so before we jump into that, just a few little logistics and we'll get rolling. So our disclaimer, Five is focused on providing the world with resources to educate, inform, and promote harm reduction. This content of this webinar has not been evaluated by the FDA. 5-MeO-DMT should not be used to diagnose, treat, or cure, or prevent any disease or condition. Five does not endorse or promote the use of 5-MeO-DMT and does not encourage or condone any illegal activities. You are solely responsible to understand and comply all the laws that may be applicable to you. And so now that that is out of the way, a little bit with our webinar rules tonight. So just like I was sharing, it's going to be a 30-minute webinar for Q&A. I'm going to be fielding the questions, and Joel's going to be kind of answering those questions while I look out for your Q&As. So there's a chat function here in the webinar. Please throw all of the questions in there. And if you can, it would be really great to keep all of the questions the topic of ethical facilitation, as that's what the webinar is all about.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. I just wanted to add, around this discussion, it can be a bit of a loaded discussion and even sometimes a bit of a heated discussion. And what I just want to put out there is, something we get to continually remind ourselves of and be reminded of is that we're all in this together. We're all working together towards a greater mission, a greater good. And this is something new. 5-MeO DMT integrating into the mass public and integrating into paradigms of Western healthcare as well. There's a lot, there's a teething process to be acknowledged. And so I think the quicker we can all acknowledge that we are newcomers and children in this and are going into something new and we can work together collaboratively, we can best discern how we can offer this medicine to the public in safe and effective ways and allow that to continually evolve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But 5-MeO DMT is moving in a very fast way right now, and it's kind of expanding and exploding all over the place. So these are really important conversations to be having. And so
Yeah.
would love if you guys have any questions, please start putting them up in the chat. We've got a few questions that we've pulled from social media and some of the questions you guys have already asked. So we're going to start with those, and then I'll keep my eyes peeled on the Q&A here. So
Mhm.
for our first question, um, yeah, this one came from Instagram. So I really want to step into facilitation, but I'm scared since several people in my community have been harmed after sitting with Bufo. Do you have any recommendations for me? I don't really know how to move past the fear of this.
Mm. I Yeah, I like the question. It's a very common question. You know, I feel it's a good sign for anyone in their process to be questioning whether or not it is appropriate at this stage in their life where they are to be stepping into facilitation of this molecule. There are unfortunately a lot of scary stories out there, and a lot of people have witnessed or heard about, people in their communities or networks being harmed by a 5-MeO DMT process, and it's something that can happen. And so there is a lot to consider there. And, the first thing we usually say is why? Check your why first. What is your why? It is a very natural phenomena for people to, many times, even after their first time sitting with this medicine or first few times, for their self identity structure to associate with it or associate that connection that we feel with it towards it being something that involves their path of facilitation or is something that needs to happen. Sorry if that came out weird. Um, and so, I love the yogic teacher um, who founded Ashtanga Yoga, Patabi Joyce, Sri Patabi Joyce. He always said, the impulse to become a teacher within the first 10 years of practice is a beginner's impulse and should be ignored at all cost. I think very similar should be held to facilitation, knowing that it is a very normal impulse to want to to involve ourselves in this because it's impacted us in a great way. But checking our why and checking what do we actually have the capacity and skill sets and understanding and place in our own personal process to be entering other people's processes with. And so the why does this call to you? And how? How will you be of service? A facilitation training teaches us how to safely serve this medicine. However, it still requires skill sets. A facilitation training is not going to teach you to be a psychologist. A facilitation training is not going to train you to effectively utilize things like internal family systems. They can share aspects of it, but skill sets are required in going into facilitation. So that's something really important to consider. I don't know, Victoria, you think that answered the question or you want to add on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different components to this. I think firstly, it's very good to have that feeling of fear, right? Of stepping
Yeah.
into something that's so powerful. It means that we have respect. It means that we have reverence and we're approaching it from a good place. We're here for the right reasons. We want to step into facilitation to support our communities and create benefit optimization, the most impact possible. And so, yeah, things that I could recommend around that is really just building a deep relationship with this medicine and understanding the intricacies, not just on the mat, but in the integration process. When we've had enough experience with this medicine on the mat in the integration process, we can really get a good understanding from our own perspective of why it requires so much, why having a one-off ceremony without any prep or any integration or really getting to know the participant can be harmful, why having a one size fits all dose approach can be harmful. There's so many reasons that harm can
Mm,
happen, and it's through our own experience of really understanding this molecule, and I think also mentorship
yeah.
mentorship that helps us understand that. Getting to, I always say, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? That's how we learn. So not just stepping. I think a lot of the people that are being harmed and things like this in communities, it's from people that have maybe had one sit under their belt and decided maybe they were able to get their hands on the medicine and they didn't actually maybe even do a training, maybe it was a short training. And one of the biggest problems that I see is just that of like no mentorship afterwards. There's no oversight, there's no co-visibility, there's nobody um, putting a flashlight or a magnifying glass on our shadows. And they're called blind spots for a reason. It's because we can't see it and we're always
Mm.
growing, we're always evolving. And so, yeah, I would say that that would definitely be one of my recommendations. If you do choose to step into a role of facilitation, who's my community? Who are my
Mhm.
mentors? Who is shining that light on my blind spot? Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like Mr. Michael here has a pretty great question if you want to speak to that one.
Yes, this is a good one. Okay, so Michael's asking, would the facilitation of bufo and synthetic 5-MeO-DMT be different, not including the obvious differences in administration? If so, how?
I love this question. And the short answer is no, no, they wouldn't be different besides the obvious differences in administration. The Bufo and the 5 and the synthetic experience to many people are identical, and to a few more are almost identical. And it requires the same skill sets. It is the same profound experience. It is the same profound depth of layers of self that participants are going into. So I would say the trainings would ideally look the same. You know, for example, in our training, obviously we are proponents of utilizing the pure molecule 5-MeO-DMT as for mainly ecological reasons and safety reasons. That being said, we still cover bufo dosages because everyone who is serving 5-MeO, it really serves you to know the proper dosages and protocols and best practices with all of the different types of routes of administration, all the different forms of this compound.
Yeah. And actually, I think this is a really good lead into a question that we got on social media. And this one, actually, I'm really, really happy and excited about it. It's coming from Annie Ortiz, who is a pioneer with
Mm.
5-MeO-DMT research. She's doing a lot of awesome stuff. And yeah, she has a great question around this subject. So her question was regarding ethics and 5-MeO-DMT facilitation. What is your stance when clients insist on using the toad secretion instead of synthetic 5-MeO-DMT? We presented findings from our 5-year toad population study at the Psychedelic Science MAPS conference this year, showing significant declines of toad populations in Sonora.
Ooh. Firstly, thank you, Annie, for that question. Yeah, we've got a lot of respect for Annie's research and the work that she's done to really help this field. And yeah, we heard that there was a really, really good panel at MAPS. We weren't able to attend it. We were stuck at our booth, but did get to speak to a few people involved at our booth later that day. And you know, it's a very important question, and I'm going to be cautious around using the word stance for myself and for us in these terms. However, obviously, we are very strong proponents of use of synthetic rather than bufo for the reasons of um, environment, for sustainability, for safety, for ethics, and for many more. We are very, very vocal about this, and luckily, and this may be more unique to us, it isn't a question we have to come upon within our own work, whether participants coming through Tandava or people coming through the 5 training. Generally, people finding their way to us have done a little bit of research, have done a little bit of digging, have an understanding of the implications of what is happening with the overharvesting of the toad population. You know, something that we really like to share a lot is, you know, one of the common defenses that we hear is, oh, well, it's more modernization. It's not actually milking the toads that harms them. Not exactly, but even if that is the case, and yes, of course, that is the main cause of the issues right now. However, if there is a species that is under such strain, I feel it behooves us to not rob them of their defense mechanisms, to not remove them from their natural habitat, to not tamper with them in any way so that they can have a fighting chance against the dangers that they are facing. So our stance is really to share all of the information. We are never going to directly give people advice, you should do this, but we will provide is all of the information that we have, and we will provide our feelings and our view on it, and share why we feel that way. And the best we can do is continue to share this information. And Annie, if you get to see this, we would love to get more of your research more public. We would love to share it on our platforms as well and support in any way we can because this is extremely important right now. And the more this compound grows in popularity, the more threat I think the toads will face in the long run.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. I've got another question here. I think this one is about our program. I have heard the term trauma informed a lot. Can you please share what exactly this means to you and how it is reflected in your course?
It is a term that gets thrown around a lot, isn't it?
Yeah,
That is an
it's
accurate
true.
statement right there.
Very true.
You do see that kind of glimmered onto advertisements in a lot of facilitation trainings these days. And I think just like the word integration, it is something that gets tossed around generally or often without a foundational understanding of what it really means. And so I can speak for us, well, one, what we feel is trauma informed is not just recognizing when someone may have trauma and knowing to go gentle with them or something like this. We've heard some very basic and lacking descriptions of what trauma informed can be considered. But how it reflects in our training is getting to understand how different types of trauma show up in different people, how it can show up in their mannerisms, how it can show up in their physical expression with their communication, how we can hold it, certain things that we can be mindful of to mitigate triggering these traumas or causing them to go into fight or flight, such and such. And to better allow this understanding to get across, we've got some amazing specialists that come in sharing their expertise over different types of trauma. And again, how it shows up and how it can be held and how we can work with it. And also what kinds of trauma or severities may not be appropriate in this time for working with 5-MeO DMT.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Why does a licensed clinician, still need to sit so many times to be able to apply for this program?
This is one we get a good amount of times.
Yeah.
Um, and, really our answer often is yes, a licensed clinician possesses many skill sets that will significantly aid them in being able to be a great facilitator and specialist with 5-MeO DMT. And there is generally going to be a significant amount of unlearning needed or awareness around certain therapeutic techniques and paradigms that may not translate well to psychedelic work, and particularly with 5-MeO DMT. And one of the best ways we can get a firsthand view of that is by getting to experience different processes in ourselves with this molecule, getting to experience it in different stages of our life, getting to experience it at different dosage levels, getting to experience it with different modalities on the tail end and different ways of preparation beforehand. This can allow us to again, firsthand get to feel that, like all psychedelics, but more so with 5-MeO, this is a deeply felt and more somatic kind of processing. This is an experience that transcends the rational mind on all levels. And so things like cognitive behavioral therapy are going to have much less effect or much less effectiveness with processing a 5-MeO experience than perhaps other forms or therapeutic modalities. And so it's also, again, important that we aren't just succumbing to that initial beginner's impulse, as Patabi Joyce would put it, of wanting to throw ourselves right in the driver's seat of an extremely complex and extremely profound experience and process. It's it says something to, I don't want to say the audacity of the human condition right now, but I mean, Dunning-Kruger is pretty overtly pronounced in modern Western culture, where many of us get to have an experience that could, by all means, be considered the most profound experience a human being can have. An experience that can fundamentally shift the trajectory of a person's life like nothing else in the world and almost immediately decide that we have the skill sets and are in the right place to open that door for other people. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. We have all been there. Trust me, we've all been there. It is a natural rite of passage. But clinician or not, personal experience beyond a quick little hello, we feel is needed in order to properly approach with reverence the significant role of facilitating 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah, I think it might actually be even useful, Joel, to talk a little bit about because I think it's so prevalent right now. It's really booming with these pens. A lot of therapists and facilitators are getting their hands on the pens, and I've been having a lot of discussions with them. Just I'm curious what's happening in the space, and a lot of them have never had a full dose experience
Yeah.
before, but they're still serving with these pens, and kind of the discussion around it. Well, I'm serving in low dose, and I understand low dose, so yeah, I'm curious what you want to say about
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into that one, just as it's
that.
its own big rabbit hole.
I know.
And it is an important one. It is very relevant to ethics and facilitation. So, as Victoria, as you said, there are many clinicians right now beginning to get their hands on some pens, or beginning to make their own pens, who may not have had a full release experience themselves, but maybe were trained in a certain approach that utilizes very low doses and titration with low dose pens. However, as we shared before, a low dose does not guarantee a low dose experience. And we are the people that a lot of people reach out to when they've been shook up by an experience, destabilized or harmed. So we hear a lot of these stories, and a lot of people do end up getting a bigger experience than they bargained for. And if a facilitator has not crossed into that threshold before, they will lack the fundamental resources within themselves to be able to relate with their participants in a meaningful way that can help. And it's not about guiding their experience, that can help hold their experience so the natural intelligence of that participant's psyche and body can allow it to unfold and emerge in a beautiful way. So again, it just goes to the necessity for experience. And knowledge does not replace embodied wisdom. Knowledge does not replace experience. We can gain a lot of knowledge in our mind. We can read a lot and understand a lot on a cognitive level. But until that has become embodied understanding, there is going to be a disconnect. And our approach is going to be more, so we'll succumb more to cognitive bias and our own preconditioned patterning and belief systems. So I hope that answered that question.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Just a reminder, guys, we're hanging out for another 8 minutes. So if you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. Nothing is a silly question.
And that
Um,
being said, if it doesn't end up
eh,
being 8 minutes, who doesn't want an early dinner, you know?
oh, come on. Okay, I've got a question here. I have already done a 5 day long facilitation training. How do you think this program would add to my service?
Well, but I would say in many ways. There is a limited amount we can learn within 5 days. Just thinking about the content that we have within the five training, the 9 month training, the content within there, we have whittled down to what we feel are the fundamental necessities of safe and effective facilitation. And it takes 8.5 months of weekly classes, over 45 videos, and over 35 teachers, and 2 weeks of on site to properly convey that information to where we can be confident that it has been absorbed. And so, in a 5 day training, there is going to be what information is going to be included in that. I'd be curious of, and how much energy can be devoted to each important topic, because there's a lot of very important topics when it comes to this medicine. And what we've seen over and over again is that a kind of more theoretical training that is not allowing time for processing information, because our brains work in a certain way and we have to give our brains and our minds time to process big information. And there's a lot to learn with this. And so, to directly answer the question, what would it add to your facilitation? Likeliness, it could add a whole lot. It could add a deeper and more integrated understanding of the processes under which your participants may be going through. It may give you a deeper and more grounded and embodied understanding of how to understand what kind of participant might not be a good fit for you, even. And how to be very mindful of our own stories and our own projections, how to be mindful and aware when things may be being projected onto us without just being like, hey, you're projecting on me or something like this. How to handle very, very delicate processes in loving and compassionate ways. That is something that I don't feel can be taught quickly. And is a beautiful, beautiful thing to take our time with and learn in a slow and embodied way. Pardon me, I'm killing a bunch of mosquitoes here. I'm under attack.
It's a little crazy, the mosquitoes here this year. I've got a question from Val. What would a full dose be? It's hard to imagine a low dose of 5-MeO DMT.
Oh, that's I love that question. That's the funny thing is, yeah, there's low doses, but there's really no low experience. Um, in very low doses, whether sub 1 milligram or up to, 2 milligrams, maybe, the experience is still going to be much more somatic, more somewhat gentle bodily sensations and manageable um, interruption to cognitive function. A little bit more presence in the sense of subjective self. But again, it's going to be deep the whole way. Just here at Kandava, we had a participant go into full release on a 1 to 8 pen, on a very, very, very small dosage. And it was a very beautiful one, but it luckily it was in a container that was meant to hold that. But Valeria, I love your question. And, something that's important to add on there is that any session, even if it's just intending for low dose, should be have prepped and prepared for a full release to occur. Because as we
Yeah,
always say, 5-MeO DMT is highly
highly
unpredictable.
unpredictable. Okay, I've got two more questions and then maybe we can close out. So, how can we help people reach the deep experience they're seeking? For example, when they stop themselves from inhaling the dose despite thorough preparation.
Mm, I love that. That's a great question. You know, for one, our goal isn't to necessarily help our participants reach the deep experience they're seeking. A lot of times, a big part of our work is managing expectations because people may have read some Facebook posts or Reddit threads around the non dual mystical experience. That's not always what happens with 5-MeO, and it's not what's always supposed to happen. And if we go at it pathologically or with a goal oriented approach, then we could stun our participants from being able to receive the real medicine from it because a big thing that we teach is this medicine is deeply valuable in the entire spectrum from low dose experience to full release. And so understanding the different modalities that can help them relax deeper and deeper into the experience. And also, this also speaks to the benefits of the multi-day retreat context rather than a 1 day ceremony. This is where we really love to get space and time to work with people because maybe that first day there is a lot of, to use IFS language, maybe protector part activity where they are holding on and there's a lot of stuff bringing up resistance. But then later on in the integration check-in, we can facilitate an opening of space for the content that was being resisted to. We can work with the parts of the psyche that we're holding on. We can gain a deeper sense of trust with those deeper layers. And then the next day, we can maybe even start them off in a super gentle, guided relaxation. Then maybe even do some somatic or parts work and then go in very gentle, bit by bit at a time. And that allows us to honor the participant's process and then honor the natural innate intelligence because it's not an accident or just a mistake that there's resistance. It's not something that we want to force through or step over. It's something that we want to get curious about and say, okay, let's get to know where this resistance is coming from. Let's get to see what parts are triggered. And again, that's where having these additional skill sets are so beneficial around facilitation of 5-MeO because it allows us to engage with the process rather than reaching towards a goal of a specific state of the 5-MeO experience. Hope that answered. That was a great question.
Absolutely. Are you open to take another question
Yeah,
from
let's do
From
it.
Elizabeth? Okay. All right. With the rise in conversation around ibogaine and trauma and legalities around psychedelics in general, do you see 5-MeO becoming a bigger part of the conversation? and a rise in searching for trained facilitators?
Oh, great question. And in short, yes. Yes, because ibogaine is getting a lot of attention right now, particularly in policy, both in Texas and in Kentucky initiatives. We've seen action in DC around shifting policy, and this is getting exciting because one, a profoundly impactful medicine is getting a bit more attention finally. Um, and it is that is a medicine that requires a lot of understanding. And so we're very glad to see some amazing people taking the helm in those initiatives. And 5-MeO is also somewhat attached to this process. Many of the people who are getting ibogaine treatments, especially for veterans with PTSD, are also doing 5-MeO DMT. So we are seeing a lot more people reaching out around how does 5-MeO itself work for combat trauma PTSD? Maybe I'm not fully feeling called towards ibogaine. What would just doing 5-MeO look like for me? One of the things that we do hear a lot is that people will do an ibogaine then post ibogaine 5-MeO experience, and then what they will share is that the 5-MeO almost felt like an afterthought, where the whole container was created around the ibogaine experience, and the 5-MeO was a little add-on, but they found that the 5-MeO was actually more profound to them or felt more impactful than the ibogaine. And so then they come seeking an experience that is really made to hold just the 5-MeO process. And I think both are beautiful. And so for those who may be curious around what this can do for their trauma, particularly around combat, if they're more curious around 5-MeO, just knowing that there are options. And so that's a really beautiful thing. Well, it looks like Victoria has dropped off. Hopefully, you're still hearing me here. But oh, you're
I'm
with
back.
us.
Hey. Well, I think we're at the end anyway.
We are.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun. I've got a few
Mhm.
announcements for you guys. If you guys wanted the webinar recording from the ethics and facilitation training webinar that we did, it's actually up on the YouTube channel now, so you can watch the whole full recording there. Not sure if some of you have been to our bi-weekly integration circles, but we do bi-weekly and they're completely free. It's people from all around the world, some people who've been through Tandava, some people who've, sat in different parts of the world with different facilitators, talking about their experiences, getting support, and all sorts of good stuff. So if you're looking to get into some community around 5-MeO DMT, we would love to see you there. And then, yeah, lastly, our facilitation training that's starting in September, we do have a few spaces left, just a couple of
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you just froze again, but it was at a perfect time. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all your great questions. We really appreciate you being part of the cause, part of the mission, and participating. So, see you around. See you soon. As always, any questions, anyone needs anything, just reach out anytime, and we're here. And we'll see you all soon. Ciao.